advanced slides?
No, so right here, this is my screen for LinkedIn. It is still showing the old format, so you can follow your LinkedIn to see where you can get the groovy new format that Ted Prodromou is showing us on his training. So some different changes there. You can follow along on the training to see what those are. In the meantime, some things to be aware of that is going to be relevant either in the old format or the new format. And the number one thing that most people are not leveraging on LinkedIn, and it's actually fairly user-friendly once you see how it's done, are the recommendations system. So LinkedIn makes recommendations, and what makes that special is the only way they get on there is if the person who is logged in is actually posting them. Typically, you will see recommendations on a website, and sometimes they don't even include the full name. This can make sense if you're in the healthcare industry, but otherwise, there's no reason why someone wouldn't want to have their smiling mug on there and the opportunity to get that exposure for themselves as well. And it's just a great opportunity to leverage LinkedIn, give people that exposure as well. You can offer recommendations, of course, it's not just one-sided, and grow in a way that other people are not really using. So one thing I can ask you, Ted, is I noticed that this doesn't even really show up until I hover over it. I'm not sure if the new user interface makes this a little bit more obvious, either how to be recommended or how to give a recommendation.
We won't know until we see the full version, because the version I had was a beta version.
Okay, so it's not
it has
on
a
there
lot
currently.
less than the new version, because I saw some client sites.
Okay. Okay, cool. So just so right now, the only thing about asking people or asked to be recommended, it's really not going to show up until you hover over it. Once you're aware of it, it appears, but just in case, that could be a little bit more obvious. So I'm going to hit manage.
I do know the new version, a lot of options it's very clean looking till you start hovering like that, or you start doing like a search. More options pop up as you dig deeper into some kind of function you're doing.
Oh, good to know that LinkedIn is giving you more hover options, so that just gives a reason to get familiar with where those are in the interface. So it does look really clean, user-friendly, but if you don't know how to perform a function, it can be a little confusing until you actually pull up your desktop and start hovering over where you would expect a functionality to be. So now that this is managed, so this shows the ones that you've received and the ones you've given and the way you could ask for one. The most effective way really to ask for a recommendation on LinkedIn is to actually send the link. I also like to create a little blurb, something using the words that I received when client is happy with the work. They'll say, oh, exceeded expectations, I'm getting great results, great feedback from my clients. It was really on time, great to work with you. So that kind of feedback, you want to language it the way that your client did and use that when you're composing a draft of a recommendation. And I think a lot of hesitation with this is people just don't know how to use it, or they would be more willing to provide recommendations. And this is just a great credibility that you just don't have on a website. You always wonder, anybody can throw up anything on there, but when it's on your LinkedIn, that person actually posted it, approved it, and had the opportunity to edit it. So I'm going to be asking for a recommendation. I'm Veronica Cannady at Cannady Consulting, Websites and Marketing. So if I wanted, Ted already kindly provided me with one, but if I were going to ask him, you can ask here, and then LinkedIn just at that point prompts you to put in some more details. And here is where you can just quickly write a blurb using some of their language of what they really got from the value of working with you. And then when you send it, what's cool is he receives an email and it has a link right there. So he doesn't have to be an expert on LinkedIn just to click that link, log into his LinkedIn account, and it will take him right to the recommendations. It just makes it so easy for him to provide that recommendation, which is what you want when you're asking your clients for the favor of their time. And then of course it gives him exposure. So when we go back to my profile, because he has already kindly provided me with one.
A quick tip there, when you put in that little message, it wouldn't hurt to write a little blurb for the people. Say, hey, would you mind using this as a recommendation or editing this? Because a lot of people don't know what to say.
Oh, that's what I meant when I said use the language that they provided to you. So when the project's done and they're saying how happy they are to work with you, when you ask for that LinkedIn recommendation, actually create a draft using their language
Right.
of what they would use to give you the recommendation, and they have the opportunity to edit it and then approve of it before you ever receive it. But when you give them that running start, they don't have to remember what they said, think about it, sit down, compose it. You're making it as easy as possible. And then of course, giving recommendations is one of the best ways to instigate receiving it. And that also shows on your profile. So we're going to scroll right down to Veronica Cannady. So that is where I'm currently working. And here, now this is also just some exposure that shows that Ted Prodromou, he recommended me, but he's also the kind of chap that will give a recommendation. So it's just real nice to work with people who have that, that give and receive mentality. They're in the flow of things. These are the great people to work with, and it's always exciting to just to feature that and also to thank the client. Please remember to do that when they have provided that recommendation to you. So just real quick, let's go to Ted Prodromou, because now you've seen it on my profile, but let's say you go to a profile and you want to give that person a recommendation. So you can scroll down to recommendations, but there is a drop down that provides the option once you're in someone else's profile. This isn't going to be visible when you're looking at your own because you're not going to recommend yourself. So here where there's a drop down where it says send a message, here it goes, there we go, recommend. So it's showing me this even though I have provided a recommendation for Ted. As a member of his LinkedIn Coaches program, I've received value from LinkedIn and that relationship development. So I put a recommendation down for Ted, and here I have the option to give him a new one, update it, revise it, but it really is that simple. I could scroll down to his recommendations, or I can just click the drop-down box. One thing I do want to bring your attention to is when I'm choosing to recommend him, I want to make sure that I'm selecting the correct company. And with Ted, for SEO purposes, under the same company, he's worn different hats. He's done SEO, he's done lead generation, he's done LinkedIn training. So with this drop down, I can say I was a client of Ted's and my position is Veronica Cannady Consulting, and here I just want to pay attention to what I'm selecting. I haven't worked with him for Google AdWords, so I want to select LinkedIn Coach at Search Engine Simplified. So that's another tip when you're wearing multiple hats in the same company, you do have the option to feature the different job descriptions within that same company, and just to look for that when you're giving or receiving or even asking for recommendations.
I didn't know I could give more than one recommendation to one person. I just learned something.
Actually, I think if you receive this, we could test it out. I think it might overwrite the first recommendation I gave you.
I wondered if you choose a different job, it may let you put two in there. I'm not sure.
Let's do it for LinkedIn training. We can just do a test and see if you even receive it, and if it overwrites the first recommendation I provided, just for fun. Because certainly if someone hires you, for example, in my case, if they hired me for the web design as well as copywriting or the landing page, that would be two. Well, in my case, I use Cannady Consulting for all the services I've provided. With Ted's, that's an SEO trick. Ted, what's your take on that? The reason I liked consolidating my job under one is I didn't want to, at a quick glance, it might look like I was job hopping if someone didn't really pay attention, if they were just gleaning it. Another thought is if they gave me a recommendation, would it look like I've only received two when I actually have almost 30? So I saw some drawbacks to that, but from an SEO perspective, it appears that it really does work to help. And clearly you did it with your profile. What would you advise when it comes to the different expertise that someone may share in their company for how they should list it on LinkedIn?
I've got it with one company and I have all those different jobs. So if you gave me recommendations in each different jobs, it means it's expertise for that specific job. So if you do one for LinkedIn training, you're complementing my LinkedIn training expertise. Where if you're talking about my Twitter, then you're complementing my Twitter experience. And then the LinkedIn profile shows you, it says you have 30 recommendations total. Also in that little screen.
Okay, so you're saying from a recommendation standpoint, it's possible to leave a recommendation for Twitter, for Google AdWords, for the different services that you provide. That can certainly be an advantage if someone's willing to leave more than one. It'll take the time to do that.
That's what I'm thinking here. If you do more than one, or it's going to say you already did a recommendation for Ted when you try to send this.
Let's see, I just hit send.
So that would be interesting.
Okay, hitting send.
Okay, let me get over here.
Aha, please enter. Oh, this was my message to Ted. Okay, here we go. So I'll just type in please review. Okay, so the actual recommendation content that's going to get posted gets its own box, that makes sense. And then you can personalize the recommendation, of course, with a quick message. And then he receives a link, which makes it easy for him to review, edit, or just accept. And now let's hit send. Yes, it allowed me to do that. Okay, that certainly provides an additional advantage to divvying up your company into segments on your profile to feature where you are an expert.
Yeah,
as opposed
I see
to
it. I got the
consolidate.
email.
So for example, if Ted
That's
wanted,
good.
yes, so if Ted wanted to specifically recommend me and it was under Cannady Consulting, it would say that he has already recommended me and it would allow him to create or edit a new recommendation, but he wouldn't be able to give me two recommendations under the same company. So LinkedIn, well, I'm not sure what this is about. I just went to my profile. So LinkedIn,
I've been seeing that arrow a lot lately.
all I did was request to go back to my profile. Okay, that's just
Yeah,
a glitch.
yeah, I don't know.
That happens with all software. So we'll just.
I've been seeing that quite a bit the last couple weeks.
Let's actually go back to Ted's because I want to show you how he sections his jobs under his own company. We've already discussed how mine is clustered together, and my motivation behind that was I wanted to consolidate my recommendations. Now, Ted, I do believe to some extent you can control them. When you receive them, you can actually move where you want. So, for example, someone recommends me and they did it quickly and they accidentally put it under the wrong company, I can actually move it to Cannady Consulting. That's an extra step, and I believe I need to do that from my desktop, and it's not just easily done from the mobile app. But I believe I have some control over where the recommendation actually shows up.
Let's see, I just accepted yours.
Okay. So here it shows 27, and it's all nicely clustered under Cannady Consulting, and it also shows 5 years. It just shows the longevity there, but that would
Actually,
be the case.
I couldn't control where it went, but I can control what order they display in under that job. Interesting.
So let's say I should have selected Google AdWords. You're not able to move that recommendation if I had put it under the wrong category?
No,
Okay. You would have to
I
ask
could
me to
send
do
you a
it.
message back and say, can you please update this recommendation? I can say, could you do it for this job?
Okay.
But I don't have control over it.
Another nice thing is when you ask to be recommended and you send them the link, it just automatically gets categorized through the company that you requested the recommendation from. That's another advantage of initiating the request rather than waiting for someone to go through the steps to recommend you. So here with LinkedIn, with Ted's LinkedIn, you'll see how it's going to be still under his company, but you can see how here it shows that he's doing LinkedIn lead generation and he has the recommendations under this category. And then also as a LinkedIn coach, scroll down, he has additional recommendations. And this is all under search marketing, so you can see it's for the same company. It just really features his different expertise in a very glance-friendly format. And plus it's good for his SEO when people do a search for this. Now, Ted, let's say I see right here you have a good paragraph written underneath. I'll wait for that to scroll up. Award-winning author, yes, The Ultimate Guide to LinkedIn for Business, which I have, and I see you've got a nice paragraph here. So is it also powerful to have your keywords in your employment content, or do you really need to section your company into job titles in order to compete on LinkedIn?
Both.
Ah.
So do a search at the top and search for Google AdWords.
Sure.
And put it in quotes. See if it helps.
Oh.
Sometimes the quotes help.
That's right. Otherwise, it'll search both Google AdWords, but not necessarily together.
Well, it doesn't work like Google does.
Right.
Not always.
You know, LinkedIn is still such an impressive search engine. I remember when I saw my LinkedIn profile even before my website popped up. So here I've done Google AdWords.
So here's Laurel. So click on Laurel's profile.
Okay.
And what they used to do is highlight them in yellow. There we go.
I see the highlights. So clearly.
See, it doesn't do the phrase. It does just the individual words still.
Okay. Good ups. Now I
You
believe
could do
there's
the
a
Boolean
way.
search. You could say Google and, capital A-N-D.
Let's try that. I'm curious. That would be a nice way to search for them together.
One thing we discovered, I'm working with a lot of LinkedIn people, LinkedIn experts, they use the Boolean search, and that's going to be available more and more.
Okay.
So you might have to put "and" in all caps. I think it's not real smart.
That's really an advanced technique then for using LinkedIn Advanced Search.
This is how we used to search the web browser for the search engines.
There we go.
There you go.
I see Google AdWords together. I don't know.
So that's doing the phrase match, it looks like.
That's helpful.
I'm going to do a whole session on Boolean search, or whole.
Perfect. Especially since LinkedIn is just awesome still as a search engine.
So still does just Google. Yeah. Okay. It shows you. Wait. Here's the power of the job titles.
Yes.
Look
Because
at her. All
she
of them
has-
have AdWords in the job title.
And there's really no description, and yet she's still ranks at the top.
Yeah.
Now, this isn't just a job description because she doesn't really have Google in the actual job description, but for the company. Now, does that make a difference, the fact that she actually works for the company, as opposed to putting Google AdWords strategist, Google senior
Now the
industry analyst?
company name also is a ranking factor.
Ah, that makes sense.
A little harder to control that unless you can come up with a name with a great keyword phrase.
Okay, so
It's
Now-
like your domain name with SEO. If you have a domain name, it seems to rank really high too.
of course. Now
But Google
notice.
says it doesn't matter, but we know.
We've seen
We know
that. We've
better.
seen that it does. So you'll notice with Karen, it said connect. It gave me the opportunity to connect with her, but you cannot recommend somebody that you're not already connected to. It's another advantage of using LinkedIn for connections. So for the purpose of this training, a way to stand out, we did a quick scroll of Karen, and she's still ranked very well because she obviously works at Google, but no recommendations there, and she's been working there. I saw a couple of years in 4 different just 4 different arenas. So she's clearly been with the company a long time and moved through the ranks, but hasn't leveraged LinkedIn to use that opportunity to collect, those very credible recommendations that are very easy to both give and receive. So I really like to encourage someone as a way to stand out and just be exceptional. The things that really attract attention to your profile, that's one that's underutilized, and it's very easy, and it's a great way to build goodwill and just really stay connected to your contacts. There's even a psychology behind giving a favor. It actually creates warmth toward that person. You would think it's the opposite. You would think asking would create that, but there's something in the that when you give a favor, you actually have increased sense of warmth toward the other person, as long as, of course, it stays reasonably reciprocal. So Ted, what's your take on that with the LinkedIn recommendations? Does that even help at all with LinkedIn as a search? If someone has a lot of recommendations, any other advantages to it other than from a credibility standpoint?
Yeah, they don't come out and actually tell you all the ranking factors. Like Google doesn't tell you exactly what they are. But I know people with a lot of recommendations rank higher because their credibility is higher. Plus, when people scan your profile and they see, oh my gosh, Veronica has 100 recommendations, she must be awesome. So I think it's definitely a credibility thing.
Do you even need 100? Like, for example, with your profile, you actually have quite a few. At first glance, it looks like you have 2, but you scroll down, you've got 7 under your book, 2 under LinkedIn. It's divvied up by your different services.
Right. So I think I have like 30 total.
Yes, and they're all
They're all
sectioned
scattered.
off.
But I think if you click, it takes you to a page.
Let's go down to recommendations and see if there's just a way to look at all of them, but how many people are going to know how to do that? And with, for example, a colleague of yours that you worked with, his name's Kevin Cannady, also on LinkedIn, he does have all of his clustered in one place to accentuate the high number of LinkedIn recommendations that he has.
Right.
But that is also one of his unique selling propositions, and he wants to make that obvious.
Right. So the trick is, not really a trick, put your primary job function as your number one job, and then ask people for recommendations for that job.
Mm-hmm. Exactly, and that way you control where the recommendations go to.
Yeah.
Now, a question with that, Ted, is, for example, if someone hires you for Google AdWords, instead of recommending your book or lead generation LinkedIn strategies, would you still cluster all of that under one job description for search engine marketing, or would you divvy them up? So you could still use the SEO advantage of the job titles, just ensure that you're asking for recommendations under one primary job title, which I think for you would fall under LinkedIn Coach.
Yeah, I think I would go, if it's Google AdWords, I'd specifically put it there. Just if somebody's searching to have me do Google AdWords for them, I'd want them to see the recommendations in one place.
Okay, so really it sounds like it's more powerful to divvy it up, because I can see here how many, you see there's 30, and that's a great number of recommendations considering how few are really taking advantage of this feature.
Yeah.
And here it's really cool. I can even see that he's given quite a few recommendations, because that's very telling. Someone has 200 recommendations. They've given one.
Right.
So this is a nice feature of LinkedIn. I think it's underutilized and underappreciated, but thanks to trainings like this, we know what to look for when we're deciding not just what skill set we're looking for, but who do we want to work with.
Yeah.
Very cool. Well, Ted, that summarizes the key that I really wanted to share about. I love this feature of LinkedIn. It's just so credible. They feature it well. You can even move these boxes around when it comes to your own profile if you wanted to bump up recommendations a bit higher. Just a great opportunity that's underutilized. That I'd just like to see people use it more, because that's what we love about checking out people's profiles. We want to hear their story. We want to see what they're good at. And of course, if I see, hey, we both know Coach Sherry Wynn, and she's endorsing Ted, I'm going to check that out. Hey, Sherry, tell me about that. Tell me about that project.
And that's what I do a lot of times. I've got to get back in the habit of doing it all the time. When I finish a project with a client, or I'm in the middle of it or towards the end, I'll give them a recommendation and talk about what kind of person they are, how they're to work with, really give them a good recommendation of somebody. If you're a consultant, this is a good person for you to work with because they're really knowledgeable, or they have good skills, or whatever.
Ted, that's a great tip. And I love how you talk about your experience actually working with the person, not just they were competent, they were on time. Those are valuable traits, but we love hearing about what makes someone exceptional to work with. The soft skills matter as well as the technical skills.
Yeah, when you see that, as you know, when you're out there and you don't know how it is to work with certain clients, if you see a lot of recommendations on LinkedIn saying he's a great person to work with, he's got a good character, you're going to want to work with them.
That's right. We look for someone that we trust as well as someone whose skill set we value.
Yep.
Thanks so much, Ted.
Thank